Once you've got that for first contact resolution, it becomes easy to go back and start looking at those repeats down to an agent level to look at solve rates per individual contact reason types. So with that, let me pass this back to Sabrina for questions, and then I will come on just at the very end and give a very quick summary.
Thanks, Rob. We're opening up the floor for questions now. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, if you have any questions, please submit them via your webinar link. We've had a couple questions that have come in during the webinar, so I will ask them as we end, but please continue to submit them. The first question is, can the data that you've spoken about help me determine the root cause of issues, such as what caused a spike in calls in a certain time period? How quickly is information made available to assist me in this?
Well, if you're capturing interactions as they happen, then it's made available almost immediately. And the advantage of having, by capturing the interaction information, what you end up with is, say you have an FCR number of 72%. If the president shows up at your office at 9:30 on Tuesday morning and said, my wife called, you gave me this 72% yesterday, where does her call fall into this? Was it resolved or not? You know, how hard is that to get today? Well, because you have all the interaction details, you've got an auditable system that you can actually drill down to the specific example. So to be able to get down to the root cause becomes very easy. Again, you can go look at specific examples. I can go look at an agent and say, you have a problem with policy mods. So instead of doing random call evaluations, I'm going to say, give me 5 calls where it was policy modification that you did not solve. So there was a callback afterwards. Or give me 5 calls that were policy mods that you did solve. The customer didn't call back. So you get very, very targeted in how you go look at where some of the problems are and start to put fixes in place.
Thanks, Rob. Another question, when measuring FCR at the agent level, how do you ensure that FCR performance for each CSR isn't negatively impacted by the fact that a rep doesn't have control over the call when they pick up the phone and it happens to be a 2+ call? Their only alternative at that point is to focus on call resolution, right?
Yeah, and what that gets back to, as I mentioned, is the solve rate. And so FCR is not a measurement you can use to measure an agent with, because they do not have control over whether it's the first call or the 9th call. What they do have control over is that they fix the problem once and for all. They are different numbers, but you will find that your solve rate is directly connected to your FCR rate. As your solve rate improves per agent per call type, your first contact resolution rate improves for each customer.
Okay, next question. How do we attempt to improve FCR in an industry like insurance where the calls by nature need to be transferred across departments? We don't have one call center capable of addressing all issues. We have different call centers for policy, claims, billing, etc.
Well, the important thing is an interaction system of record should ideally be capturing these key data elements from every area that impacts the customer experience. So if a contact comes into one call center, and by the way, some calls are not FCR-able. Some calls by nature are, you know, there should be 5 of them to actually get through this process that we're going through. And for those kinds of calls, what you want to look at in terms of process is, okay, not one and done, but did we do it in 5 calls, or did we take 7 or 8 calls, and then how do we get that number down to eliminate some of those unnecessary calls? When you start transferring calls around a contact center, so if it's and it's important thing with FCR is about the interaction, not necessarily the call. And what I mean by that is where a lot of people will fall down is a call doesn't necessarily have a specific contact reason. It may have 2. Right? How many people who are on the webinar today, at the end of the call, the agents say, is there anything else I can help you with today? And if the customer says yes, the agent doesn't say, great, can you call back? So you need to be able to understand that a certain call may have, it may be a policy call into an insurance company, but then there's something else, then that has to be transferred to a second person. So there's actually 2 interactions and 2 calls, and you want to track those interactions independently of each other, but you want to track it across the entire interface to the customer base so that you put all the information in one place so you get a single consistent view of what's going on. So
Well,
I hope that might answer the question. Yes, please.
Can I just come in with that on a point? Because this is in the insurance industry. It's something that I've been talking to an insurer about last week. And one of the things as well is that with insurance, obviously there are kind of 2 main chunks to the business. One being the initial sale of the insurance policy, and the other being, you know, what happens if your kitchen gets flooded, or you have a car crash, and all of a sudden people need are calling for very different reasons. Now, one of the things I think with one of the things from an agent perspective, when they've got this very large knowledge requirement, we've been seeing FCR information used decisively is not necessarily to educate the agent on what to deal with a huge myriad of issues that they can't, as an individual, deal with. Is what they have begun to do more effectively is to sort of break the call into what we would call topics and keys. So, and in the insurance sector, the client I'm working with at the moment has got sort of 4 main topics, and those topics are: is it a call that could have gone through automation? Is it a call where specialist knowledge is required over and above the agent? Is it a call where the customer has not been looked after particularly well and they need to be loved by the agent? And lastly, where there's a go-away scenario where the caller has actually